Welcome, fellow Lions fans. Hope everyone had a safe and happy Halloween. For those of you who have kids, who doesn't love the yearly tradition of stealing candy from your kids' buckets? Speaking of stealing, the ref who was sitting in his mom's basement in New York stole the Packer game away from Brian Branch. But I'd like to thank him because we won the game anyway, and Branch got a load management day off. The last time he got a game off was after his Week 3 concussion. His next game was in Texas against the Cowboys, where he got 2 interceptions and a forced fumble. This Sunday, he'll also be in Texas, so I'm expecting a minimum of 3 interceptions, forced fumble, and a sack against the Texans on Sunday night, and that's just Branch. Curbio's going to get a pick too. Thank you, ref, for the monster game Brian Branch is about to have on Sunday Night Football. I'm Jimmy Liao, University of Michigan Medical School grad, board certified in family medicine. This is the Detroit Lions Podcast Medical Edition. I'm recording this on Tuesday, November the 5th, a bit earlier than usual because I'm heading to Houston to train to be an astronaut, so I'm ready when the NFL plays an international game in space. I'm also going to eat some Texas barbecue, and if I don't end up in a food coma, I'll catch the Lions game. If anybody has any recommendations on things I should do in Houston, let me know on Twitter at Jimmy Liao MD. Last name is Liao. Before we get to the Packer game recap, let's welcome Zadarius Smith to the team. We just traded for him this morning. We traded a 2025 fifth-round pick and a 2026 sixth-rounder for Zadarius Smith, and we also got in return a 2026 seventh-round pick. So basically, we gave up next year's fifth-round pick and swapped a sixth and seventh rounder in 2026. He's 32 years old, so he's not a spring chicken, but he is signed through next year. According to my reading of his contract, he's signed through next year. It would cost us $11 million to keep him next year, which doesn't sound too bad if he's still productive. I can't believe this trade news actually somewhat broke while I was watching him play for the Browns on Red Zone on Sunday. It would just have been our luck if he got injured during that game. During the Red Zone, I saw him get multiple good pressures, really better than what we're getting from our edge rushers right now. So really good sign, and really also good sign that he did not get hurt. Also interesting is the Browns' bye is coming this week. So Zadarius will get a bye this year. I've always found this sort of fascinating how teams are handling the situation. It wouldn't surprise me if the Lions have some underlying agreement that we'll try to get you a game off later in the year since you haven't gotten a bye. Wouldn't surprise me if he has some kind of minor injury later this year and the Lions just say, take the game off. This is your bye week. Let's get you ready and healthy for the playoffs. From a medical history standpoint, Zadarius had a back surgery in 2021. We don't have any details about the back surgery, but almost certainly not as severe as what Levi Onwuzurike had, which was a lumbar fusion. Maybe something a bit more minor, like a pinched nerve laminectomy, like Vitae might have had a couple years ago. Backs are tricky, though. No guarantee that a back surgery is actually going to fix the symptoms, which could be pain or nerve impingement. Fortunately, though, Zadarius looks like he's pretty darn healthy now, so whatever surgery he had may have worked. Now let's get to the Packer game, which was a pretty healthy one overall. The biggest scare was Jaylen Gibbs. He had his left foot dangerously trapped on his big 30-yard run. Getting that foot trapped can cause a high ankle sprain or a fracture that can knock a guy out for weeks or months. While this wasn't a hip drop tackle, the mechanism of injury is the same, landing on that ankle. On video, there was a slight external rotation of the ankle, which can cause a mild high ankle sprain. Gibbs's foot is able to slip out, though, to avoid a more serious injury. The very next step, his right foot planted hard with his right leg extended. That puts him at risk for a right knee hyperextension. But the angle of the leg to the ground and the slippery field allowed his foot to slip just a bit, which probably avoided a further injury there. Hyperextensions are dangerous. We saw this with Laporta last year, which was a scary-looking one. They can cause bone bruises, knee sprains, and even a very serious issue like an ACL tear or a nerve damage like we saw with Jaylen Smith a few years ago in college. Gibbs was limping later on the drive, but he was still able to end the drive with a touchdown. He looked pretty good, looked fast, he looked fine. He didn't play much after that, but he did return to the game in the fourth quarter, which was very reassuring. Even more reassuring was he showed up at the Pistons game Monday night, goofing around, having a great time, practicing his fadeaway jumpers, so it looks like he's probably going to be just fine. Now, it's interesting that the wet weather, along with the mostly natural grass field, probably helps save Gibbs from a more serious injury here. So it brings up the whole turf versus grass debate again. I've played a lot of sports before. I played Ultimate for many years. We usually play that on grass. But at University of Michigan, we'd often have practices at the Oosterbaan Fieldhouse, which is an indoor field with field turf. You don't wear regular cleats there because you don't need to. You just wear these cleats called turf cleats or turf shoes, which is almost similar to a regular athletic cross-trainer shoe, but it has more harder, rubbery, circular cleats on the bottom. You get about 50 or 100 of them at the bottom as opposed to a normal aggressive cleat where they're only like 7 or 10. The turf cleats are more flat on the bottom. It doesn't grip in the field as much, so it's a much safer cleat to wear on field turf. Even with wearing those turf shoes, it's noticeable how much more athletic you are on field turf. You can cut so much faster, you can run a lot faster, and you can jump much higher than playing outside on natural grass. Here's what I think the NFL should consider doing if they want to increase safety on field turf, which is to limit the type of cleats and the length of cleats players wear on field turf. Instead of these hard, long, aggressive cleats, make them wear the shorter, rubbery field turf cleats. It's going to decrease speed, decrease cutting ability, so players might not look quite as fast or quite as quick out there, but it's all relative. As long as everyone's doing it, it's a level playing field, and fans won't care. The game's not going to look much different at all, and there's going to be fewer injuries because players are not as quick and fast out there. There might be a little bit more slipping at first, but once players adjust and slow themselves down and set up their feet properly, the game should look the same. The little bit of extra slippage may help prevent a lot of injuries like we saw with Jahmyr Gibbs, where the slipping may have saved his left ankle as well as his right knee. The bottom line with Jahmyr Gibbs' possible injury is nothing overly concerning at this point, possibly a very mild left ankle sprain, possibly a mild right knee bone bruise, but early indications are he's going to be fine. He's probably going to be totally fine for the Texans game. Next guy was Jalen Reagor. In the fourth quarter, hurt his left shoulder appeared. His left arm appeared to be slightly tugged by a Packers player's bent legs during his tackle. The main concern when you're getting your arm tugged out like that, when you're falling onto the ground, is a subluxation of the shoulder joint. He was nursing his left arm at the next play and went to the bench after that. But good news is that he did return to the game later for the onside kick. Hopefully that's a sign this is just a minor shoulder sprain and not something more severe like a subluxation or even a labral tear, which can happen with a subluxation. Probably got an MRI already to check for any kind of damage, so we'll know more about this on Wednesday. Next is Carlton Davis, who looked like he hurt his right shoulder or arm in the fourth quarter. It was really bothering him after the play. The trainers had to help him off. Hopefully this is just a stinger. That's possible as his neck was torqued to the left, which can pull on that brachial plexus nerve area, which can cause the stinger. He was flexing his fingers afterwards, which could have indicated tingling or sensation loss, which is consistent with a stinger. Hopefully that's all that's going on here. It's also possible he had a contusion to the shoulder area due to the direct impact to the right shoulder. The unlikely worst case scenario would be a pec tear. That can happen when you're trying to make a tackle and the rudder breaks away from you. We saw this earlier in the year with Kyle Pecco. Davis was tapping on his pec area after the play. Hopefully it's not that. It's Tuesday. We probably would have heard about it by now. Since we haven't heard anything, likely there's nothing serious going on with the pec. We should know on Wednesday if there's any significant concern, but I'm not worried about much right at this moment. Penei Sewell, late in the game on the final drive, looked like he had a right mild low ankle sprain. It looked like he took a bad step, tweaked his right ankle. Didn't see anything more concerning than that on video, although the video was partially obscured. Not expecting any kind of knee issue here. He was able to finish out the rest of the game. A mild low ankle sprain would be a good outcome. That's something you can tape up. Would not affect his availability for the Texans game. Remember, though, that he did have a mild right ankle sprain back in week 1. Didn't miss any games for that. It's been a couple months. That's likely healed up at this point, but an aggravation of that injury is still a possibility. Other observations coming out of the game, James Houston got by far his most playing time of the year, and he looked pretty good. He got chipped a surprising amount of times, which means the other team is showing some respect for his pass rush ability, or it's possible that was just in the strategic plan anyway to chip whoever was over there. But regardless, it was good to see Houston out there quite a bit. He still doesn't have that bend and dip move we saw a couple years ago, but the wet, slippery field might have made that almost impossible anyway. It'll be interesting to see how he performs going forward, especially on the faster, quicker field turf of the Texans Stadium. Let's get to the game preview of the Houston Texans game on Sunday Night Football. I don't have the Wednesday injury report since I'm recording this Tuesday, but there are some things we can note, though. From the Lions' standpoint, I'm not expecting anything significant to come out of that Packers game. There's always the possibility of surprises, though, so hopefully we don't have any surprises on Wednesday. From the Houston standpoint, they do have multiple injuries of note. In the last game, Kenyon Green, their left guard, hurt his left shoulder and he's out for the year. Kendrick Green is replacing him, so their offensive line might be slightly weakened, although there's reports that Kenyon Green wasn't there good of an offensive guard anyway, so maybe there's not a big difference there. A big difference will be if Will Anderson is not in the game. It looked like he had a left high ankle sprain last game on Thursday. This could be a major issue if he can't play against the Lions. High ankle sprains can definitely keep guys out longer than you might think. We saw this with Micah Parsons, who missed our game and the Cowboys game. This will be one to keep an eye on this week. Houston's punter Tommy Townsend hurt his knee last week. This will be something to keep an eye on as well. Guys who are going to be out for the game, Stephon Diggs tore his ACL in week 8 in his right knee. He's out for the year. That's a major loss for them. We do struggle sometimes against wide receivers, so having him out is going to be a big benefit to the Lions. Also might be out is Nico Collins. He hurt his hamstring, was put on IR in week 5, which means he is eligible to return for our game on Sunday. But you never know. Keep a close eye on the injury reports this week to see if he might be back. No guarantee he'll be back for our game, though. Defensive tackle Mario Edwards was suspended in week 7, and he's going to be out for our game. So those are the guys that might be missing going into the Houston Texans game from their standpoint. For the Lions, there are some guys who might be returning who have missed the past game or two. Malcolm Rodriguez hurt his left ankle in week 8, has missed a game. That could have been a much worse injury, but the reports are it's minor, and he could be back this week for the Texans. Josh Paschal has missed 2 games now with an illness. Unspecified, not sure what's going on there, but the reports are it's minor, and he may be available this Sunday. Mekhi Wingo surprisingly had an ankle injury, probably suffered in practice last week and missed this last game against the Packers. Severity is uncertain, but likely on the milder side since he was not placed on IR and was initially given a doubtful designation as opposed to out. Doubtful means he's not playing in the game, but he might be back the next game. So there's a good chance he'll be back within the next week or two, maybe even this Sunday. Sione Vaki hurt his right knee in week 8, missed a game. No video of the knee injury. Hard to say what's going on, but he didn't go down on the field. Didn't have trainers help him off. Early indications are that it's minor, and he could be back as soon as this Sunday. Christian Mahogany was moved to the active roster last week after missing the entire year, after being placed on NFI for mono, suffered back in July. The mono probably has not been an issue for over 2 months at this point. He was probably left on NFI for strategic roster management reasons. He probably could play at any point, probably still be inactive since they don't need him and all the offensive guards are healthy in front of him. Ifeatu Melifonwu, who has missed the entire year, guessing it's due to an Achilles tendonitis. He's eligible to return from IR at any time now, so we could see him as soon as this weekend. But both our starting safeties are playing well and healthy in front of him, so really no urgency to bring him back. Dan Campbell recently stated he is progressing well, so hopefully he becomes available soon. Broderick Martin, who had a right knee hyperextension back in the preseason, has yet to play this year. His practice window opened October the 30th, which means he should be ready to join the team soon. Expect him to be moved to the active roster on November the 20th or possibly even before if there's injuries at the defensive tackle position ahead of him. Somebody who might be still 3 to 4 weeks out is Emmanuel Mosley, who had a pec rupture in August. If he has the same 16-week timeline as CJ GJ of last year's pec tear, he'll be back for Thanksgiving versus the Bears, which means he would have his 21-day practice window open in the next week or two. So this is something to keep a close eye on over the next couple of weeks. Right now, our cornerback position is very healthy, though, so we don't really need him right now. But if any injuries develop, it could be really useful to have him late in the season. While we're talking about guys who might return, let's talk about some long-range prospects. Aiden Hutchinson, we know, will be back for the Super Bowl. Not his usual self, but he'll probably pick up a sack. Derek Barnes, not ruled out for the year yet. Hurt himself in week 3. MCL sprain, hyperextension of the knee, possibly more. It's significant enough to likely end his season, but he hasn't been definitively ruled out yet, though, so there's still a chance he could be back late. John Kominski made the 53-man active roster before the Lions IR'd him, which implied there is a chance he could return late in the year after his MCL surgery, which was late July. Initial reports were a 5 to 6 month recovery, which would put him into January. If he can come back, though, that would really help out our defensive edge position. Guys who are not coming back, Marcus Davenport, he's pretty much out for the year with the elbow. Also, Kyle Pecco, left pec rupture, he's also out for the year. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. I will be out in Houston, and hopefully I'll see a shitload of you guys out there also as we take over another stadium. I won't be posting any TV injury footage since I'll be at the game, but I'll be behind the bench area, so I'll post any observations or videos I get from that vantage point. Oftentimes you can see things from there that you don't see on TV. So follow me on X if you want to get any of that action. Talk to you next time.